Greetings and salutations, dear viewers, and welcome once again to the realm of Final Fantasy XIV. Just recently, we got a new patch, version 3.5, and with it, we've got 2 new dungeons, a 24-man raid, and an Extreme Mode Primal. Now, normally, I'd hold off on doing the Extreme Primal and kind of work our way up to it, but today we're going to be tackling things in the wrong order, and we're starting with Zurvan Extreme. Now, another new feature of this new patch is the Cross-World Party Finder, so you can check the Party Finder and find parties looking for people even on other servers. And that's what we're going to be doing to try to get our clear. Now, Zurvan Extreme kind of has a reputation for being very easy, and though I will say the mechanics actually aren't bad, it's not necessarily a hard fight. However, I think it can only really be classified as easy if you're already over-geared and really experienced with raid content. The regular players that are getting around, your Joes like me and you, most of you anyway, are probably going to have a hard time. Mostly because it seems about everybody in the Party Finder right now thinks they're pro. But as long as you know the mechanics and hold on tight, the fight isn't that bad. So let's hop on in to Zurvan Extreme. Now, the fight itself is divided into 3 different phases, and for something that happens in Phase 2, before the fight even begins, we're all going to want to call a direction, except for the healers. So the DPS and tanks all need to call a cardinal direction. You cannot call east or west. So it's northwest, north, northeast, southwest, south, southeast. More on what we're going to be doing with these directions when we get there. You can also see a mark put over the tank's head that is also for a mechanic that we won't be seeing until Phase 3. Of course, we have to get there first, and our party has already seen its fair share of wipes, but every now and then something goes well. Phase 1 of the fight is fairly quick and simple. The tank is going to want to grab Zurvan and point him away from the party because he has a very large cleave, and over the course of the fight, sections of the arena are going to be falling out. Now, you can just walk off the edge over there, and that is instant death. Also, along the way, you're going to be seeing AoE puddles appear around you, or AoE markers appear around you periodically, and you just need to run out of the way when they hit, and then you can move right back. Especially because the tank is going to be rotating in from the left, it's very helpful if everyone hugs the right border, so their AoE gets put over there when they try to dodge out of the way. Once 3 of the sections of the arena are broken, Zurvan will break free from his confinement, and that will bring Phase 1 to a close. In Phase 2, now that he's broken free, as usual, the tank is going to want to point him away from the party. Everyone else is going to want to group on his hind. You don't have to be strictly back there right now, so especially for a monk like myself, you can rotate back and forth a little bit. And of course, Zurvan retains the cleave that he had in Phase 1, which is just another reason the tank wants to point him away. Now, if you have enough DPS, and this is where a number of people even come into this fight with only 1 tank. I've even seen a few with only 1 healer as well. With enough DPS, though, you can skip many of his attacks in this phase. The one everyone tries to skip, and I have seen very few succeed in this, is Soar. Soar is why we called Cardinal Directions earlier, and as soon as you see him casting it, you need to get to your location. Try not to run over the red mark and get killed on your way there though. You can wait for the red mark to go away before moving if that's a bit safer. Recall that the healers did not call a direction. It honestly does not matter where they stand, though I would suggest standing with somebody else, because you really just don't want to get hit by Zurvan's attack. The reason for the calling of the directions is Zurvan is going to be doing a number of dashes across the arena. What specifically he's going to do is actually determined by the attack he did just previously, where you saw the 3 lines going away from him in the center of the arena. If you saw them all go out equidistant from each other, then here he's also going to dash across in 3 equidistant lines. So as long as everybody spaces out evenly, you should be fine. You'll also notice the large orb over our head and the AoE marker around us, which is why we need to spread out. You cannot eat 2 of these. I called northeast, so I'm huddling up here. North is just over there to my right. He's got 2 different patterns, however, that he can do with Soar. We just saw perhaps the easier one. The harder one will also have 3 dashes going across, but positioned a little differently. One will be going from north to south, one will be going from northwest to southeast, and one will be going from north by northwest to south by southeast. This one still isn't terribly difficult to deal with, though, as it divides the arena into 2 major groups, with 3 people on either side. So those 3 people just need to kind of squish together a little bit and everything will be fine. The person to the north, for example, will just have to move a little bit to the east to dodge. And once Zurvan dashes, you'll also immediately take damage from Flaming Halberd, the AoE around everyone. Additionally, one person will now have a Gather AoE around them, so everyone needs to rush to the center of the arena to eat that, except for one person who has an arrow over their head who needs to run away from everyone else. That person will get hit by an AoE that hits just about as hard as this Gather AoE does, even once it's split. If that arrow is on top of the Gather, you will die. But separately, each can be mitigated. Dealing with Soar is probably the hardest thing about this entire fight. Just remember that everybody needs to call a direction. That's not east or west. Healers do not need to call a direction. And once you're in position, take a look out and make sure you're not standing directly in front of Zurvan, and you should be fine. So with Soar out of the way, shortly afterward, Zurvan will move to the center of the arena and put a large puddle of ice directly below him. This isn't anything to worry about too much. He's not doing a really big attack or prepping for anything. Just don't stand in the puddle. It will, however, make dealing with his next attack just a little more difficult. Biting Halberd is going to hit in a massive AoE in front of him. I believe it's 270 degrees. The only safe spot is behind him. And because of that ice puddle, you can't just run directly through him. You do still have plenty of time, though, just to rotate around the side and get behind him that way. This is immediately followed by Southern Cross, which, once it's done casting, there will be a brief delay, and then it'll put a large puddle of ice on the ground where everyone was standing when it finished casting. This is still fairly easy to dodge, as for biting Halberd, Zurvan will have turned towards the party, so everyone will have rotated around to where the tank is. So as long as you stay grouped up, all of the ice puddles should appear in the same place. So just wait for it to finish casting, and then continue rotating to the left. The party rotates to the left, the tank rotates to the right. And now you're right back and ready to pummel him a little bit more, with the ice puddles all safely off to the side. Do note, though, that especially because they're all piled on top of each other, if you're not out of the way fast enough, that will kill you. At this point, Zurvan can do one of 2 different moves. Either Cyclical, which he's readying now, or Tail End. Cyclical is going to be a large donut AoE, where the safe spot is near him. We should all be grouping on his Tail End anyway, so this is really no danger at all. Now, Tail End, on the other hand, is a circular AoE around him that you'll need to back away from him to dodge. I believe at this point, if your DPS hasn't been good enough to push him into the next phase, you'll see the Claw Wave Cannon combo. We managed to skip it, so I'm not going to speak on it now, but don't worry, we'll see it soon enough. Because on his way to his third phase, he's now starting a short ad phase. The first bunch of ads will all spawn up north. There will be 1 Will and 4 Thews. The Thews I don't believe do anything of terribly good note, they just kind of run around and hit you. The Will, I believe, also just kind of hits sort of hard. It's your biggest target though, so that one will probably want to be your first priority to kill. Otherwise, just AoE these 5 down. Since TP is a very big concern for me, especially in longer fights like this, I don't bother AoEing, I just single target down whatever has the most health. Once these 5 are dead, 4 more will show up, a Wit, a Wile, and 2 Wills. The 2 Wills spawn to the west, while the Wile spawns to the south, and the Wit to the east, which should be just to the right of where you finish taking down the 5 ads. The tank is going to want to run and grab the 2 Wills, and then drag them south and tank them on top of the Wile. All of the DPS need to pile on the Wit, because the Wit is going to start casting a very powerful spell, Meteor. If this finishes casting, it's pretty much an assured wipe. Do be careful though, as at about the same time it starts casting Meteor, the Wile will start casting Fear. This is simple enough to dodge, as you just simply don't have to be looking at him and you will dodge it completely. But that does mean you're going to have to move to the correct spot on the Wit so you can continue attacking it, but also dodge Fear. To complicate that a little bit more, as long as the Wit is casting Meteor, smaller meteors are going to be hitting the arena in seemingly random spots. I found as long as I'm standing at about maximum melee distance away from the Wit, I can usually dodge any meteors that would come down on top of him, as well as be able to keep my back to the Wile. Once the Wit's dead, the meteors will stop falling, and the Wile will no longer cast Fear. So at this point, AoE, or in my case, single target down the remaining 3 ads. And now we get to do it all over again. The Wit this time spawned to the west, however if we were tanking everything to the south, it will once again be directly to your right, just like we finished fighting the first ads like before. The Wile is once again just to the right of the Wit, a Will spawns to the right of it, and in place of our second Will, we now have 3 more Thews. This ad phase goes almost identically to the previous one, so take them all down accordingly. Do note that the ads will spawn as soon as you've finished killing all existing ads. However, if you take too long, they will spawn anyway. But if you're taking so long that you can't kill the ads before more ads spawn, you're probably not going to meet the overarching DPS check anyway. With all of them dead, head back to the center of the arena. We're about to get hit by Zurvan's ultimate. If you didn't kill the ads fast enough, this will kill you outright. And now we move on to the third and final phase, where we get to use everything that we've learned up until now with some new mechanics. To start with, all of us are given a status effect, either a blue one or a red one. You will also be tethered to another player. For the moment, this isn't that important. If you stretch the tether too far, you start taking an unreasonable amount of damage. But as long as you're stacked on Zurvan's butt, you're going to be right on top of each other anyway. Do be aware, though, that somebody will be tethered to the tank, so they may have to scoot into Zurvan's hitbox a little bit to not take damage. As long as the tether doesn't go purple, you're fine. Now, almost the same time you get these status effects on you, Zurvan will start casting Wave Cannon, and one person will have a large blue AoE over their head. Everyone should be gathered on Zurvan's behind, which means both sides should be open. And the person with that mark over their head just needs to run off to one side where they're not going to hit anybody else with this. It'll hurt, but it won't kill that one person. Zurvan also starts using Tyrfing, a fairly powerful tank buster that hits multiple times, and each time he casts it, it will hit an additional time. I suppose you could call that a soft enrage if your tank can't take the blows. Southern Cross is coming back again, only we're going to handle it slightly differently. See, last time we had dealt with Southern Cross, it was right after we were all forced to gather together. The safest way I've found to handle Southern Cross here is for everyone to group in one spot on Zurvan's back. The tank needs to cross over Zurvan and greet up with everybody else. From there, you handle it just like you handled Southern Cross last time. As soon as it finishes casting, you split up with the party going to the left and the tank going to the right. This puts all the AoEs in one spot and gives you plenty of room to not get hit by anything else safely. Now, we haven't had to deal with the tethers yet, and that's about to change, as right after Southern Cross, Zurvan starts casting Broken Seal. This will put 8 little circles on the ground, 4 of each color. You need to stand on these circles paired up with the person who's tethered to you. So you can see close to us here are 2 blues, so me and my partner need to get on those 2 blues. I saw that the tank also had a blue tether, so he's probably going to get that far set of blues. There should also be 2 sets of red, which need to pair up to the nearer or farther red. And Zurvan will immediately follow this with Biting Halberd. So it's likely that one of these groups is going to be completely safe, and the other group is going to have to book to get on his back again. Do note, however, that Broken Seal can appear in 3 different patterns. What we just saw were 2 crosses, one on either side of the arena. There is also one where they're grouped in a circle very close to Zurvan, and yet another that's a very large circle very far away from him. The other formations for Broken Seal are also followed by different attacks. The 2 crosses, of course, are followed by Biting Halberd, the small circle is followed by Tail End, and the large circle is followed by Cyclical. But we'll see more of that in a moment. Be prepared because some groups of 2 may have to run a pretty lengthy distance to get to their spot. Generally, whoever is tethered to the tank goes to that side of the arena, but there is one other group of 2 that's also going to have to go over there. We didn't do anything special to designate who needed to go where for this, because it's very difficult to, as it's completely random who gets tethered to who. You do, however, have plenty of time to get into position for this. He always does Broken Seal right after Southern Cross, and Broken Seal itself not only has a fairly lengthy cast time, but before the meteors hit on the individual seals, you also have a very long amount of time. So you can start edging towards a place you want to go right after Southern Cross. And if you've made it this far, congratulations, you've made it through the second hardest mechanic of this fight. As at this point, the last few attacks are going to repeat. He's once again going to give everybody a debuff. He's going to cast Wave Cannon on one person. This is followed by Tyrfing on the tank, Southern Cross, and once again, Broken Seal. This time we got the smaller circle around the center, and I was tied to the tank. So I ran over to the tank. He's casting Tail End, so we want to move away from him. And then we can move back in and ready ourselves for his next attack, as he's going to break out of this pattern with Soar. Handle this Soar exactly how you handled the Soar back in Phase 2. Just run to your direction to spread out the AoEs and avoid Zurvan's dash. I've seen people who are refusing to learn mechanics use the tank limit break to avoid this one. I believe we actually did that here, and I'm somewhat glad for it, because Axel decided to completely forget where to run to. This is still followed, once again, by the Gather AoE, and the one person with the arrow over their head that does not need to gather. This is now followed by the Demon's Claw and Wave Cannon combo that we managed to skip back in Phase 2. Demon's Claw is going to be a single target hit on the tank. The tank is going to want to run back to the party, where, once it hits, the tank will be knocked back, and if you're standing at the very center of the arena, just slightly off to the side towards the party, you should not get hit into the instant death ring of fire around the edge of the arena. That tank will now be bound for a short while, and Wave Cannon will be targeted at that tank. If this ability goes unmitigated, it will simply kill the tank. He moves it towards the party, because with the entire party standing in this AoE, it will lower the damage enough that everybody should live. However, the person standing closest to Zurvan will get hit very hard. So you want to make sure this person is the off tank using a cooldown. Now, if you want to avoid this Wave Cannon dance, I believe I've seen the main tank just solo eat it with Hallowed Ground. But don't quote me on that one. Everybody should live and be fine, the main tank should no longer be bound, and we're once again hit with our various colors. Wave Cannon comes, and we're back to this old dance. Tearfang once again on the tank, followed by Southern Cross, and that's again going to be followed by Broken Seal. I believe at this point Zurvan will do this final song and dance one last time. After that, he hits a hard Enrage. I'm told for the hard Enrage, he actually uses one brand new ability that you don't see anywhere else in the fight that just instantly kills everyone. Pity you have to time out to see it. But that's Zurvan Extreme. Certainly not the hardest primal that we've fought thus far, especially of the extreme modes. And I'm sure once the community gets some more strategies ingrained in them, and realizes they're not getting anywhere acting like the Day 1 groups, this'll be a pretty easy run. Until next time, everyone.